I have been in the Central Florida area my whole life, and I've worked in this industry for a little over 20 years. I've been with Cloud9 about 10 years, and we do pipe inspection, sewer, storm pipe, cleaning, lining, videoing, a lot of cool stuff. We do grease trap cleaning, lift station maintenance and cleaning, and it's been a great experience. We've done work for everyone, from NASA to the Air Force to the Navy to public school, county. I mean, it's amazing the different places that this job takes you, because everybody has lift stations. If your sewage point is too low, it has to go up, and you're gonna have a lift station. Everybody has storm and sewer drains, especially in Florida. Storm is a really big utility. The purpose of this class is to go over the different kinds of lift stations and what their functions are. In the maintenance form, if the lift station is not maintained correctly, you can incur a lot of problems, not only from backups and overflows, but from additional costs. Just something like a float going bad or not being adjusted right can cause a lot of havoc in a lift station and burn up your pumps. So when the sewage leaves the building, it will either gravity downstream and ultimately end up at a wastewater facility, or it will go into a lift station, which will pump it back up, and then ultimately it still ends up at a sewer treatment facility like this one right here. And that sewer treatment facility will end up processing the sewage, and it will ultimately get discharged into a pond where it evaporates. This is a hatch for a lift station. This is talking about how it moves water from a lower elevation to a higher elevation. And there's two major components to the lift station. Actually, there's three. There's the wet well, where the pumps and the floats are. There's the valve box, where the check valves and isolation valves are. And there's a control panel, which controls the pumps, tells them when to turn on and when to turn off, and has an hour meter and an alarm. So this is a picture of this lift station. Lift station on the left has a bunch of grease in it. Lift station on the right has a bunch of rags. Both of those are problems because they will clog up the lift station, and grease, nobody wants that in their wastewater treatment plant. It messes up the bugs. And that's why you want to clean it on a regular maintenance, to prevent backups, especially prisons, apartment complexes, hospitals. They're gonna have a big problem with rags if they don't every 1 to 3 months clean the lift station. Pictures of some overflows. I've actually seen where buildings overflowing so bad that the manhole cover is floating in the air, 5-6 feet up. Sanitary sewer overflow, SSO, is an incident where wastewater or sanitary sewer overflows. When it overflows, it's going to go, it could contaminate the drinking water, it can go into waterways, it could be a public health and safety hazard, plus the cost of cleaning it up, fines, and penalties. Some of the causes for sanitary sewer overflows are equipment malfunction, clogs as a result of fats, oils, and greases, breaks in the line, power failures, contractor caused breaks, overflows, heavy rain, infiltration, inflows, negligence, repair work, industrial wastewater release. Another thing with the wet well itself, if there's a lot of infiltration going into it, that's water that the sewer treatment plant has to process that they weren't able to charge for. So a lot of the wastewater plants in Florida might get 30, 40, even 50% of the gallons per day they process are from ground infiltration. So it's really important if you have leaks that you fix it, because that can bankrupt especially a little municipality. These are some of the dollar amounts. You can see Miami-Dade got fined almost $1 million for having sanitary sewer overflows, and San Diego got fined $6 million. Just some examples. That's the a typical lift station. That's a pump that's been pulled and set down with some grease that we were removing from it. And you can see the hatch, the white pipe coming out of the structure top is a vent. And then you've got the control panel and meter and the emergency contact sign there that 24 hours a day will list whoever the emergency maintenance provider is with their phone number and the owner's information. This is a typical wet basin design, and you can see it's got the saddle and the rails that the pump slides down and leads to the saddle. It's got the discharge piping, all your control floats, your vent, your hatch, your concrete structure, your panel rack, all the conduit. This gives you a little overview. And if anybody wants this, I'd be more than happy to email you a copy if you just take my card and shoot me an email. Both of these are PowerPoint presentations, so I can give it to you real easily. This is just another example of a wet well. There's several different types. I've got another slide that goes over that. You can see the setting. You've got your off float is the lowest float in the wet well. Then you've got your lead float, which is the second lowest, your lag float, which is the third, and your alarm float, which is the top. So when the off float goes up, then the lead float goes up, one pump turns on. If the flow's too heavy or there's a problem with that one pump, when the lag float goes up, the second pump will turn on. If the alarm float goes up, then the alarm will turn on for the lift station and notify everyone, whether there's a cell phone hooked up to it. It will it will communicate. You can get it where it pages you or calls you, or just a horn goes off with an alarm light. And it's kind of the setting, and that's one of the problems is if those pumps aren't adjusted right, the pumps can continuously run or suck air and pump too low, and that causes the pump to cavitate and burn up impellers and really go through the pumps and cause a lot of problems if air gets in the line. That's why you'll see that pump off level is at the top of the pump. It doesn't allow the loop to actually grab air. That's a vertical cantilever style pump there. That's got a house built on top where the motor is up top and the volute is in the bottom. A lot of your bigger, older lift stations will have those. University of Florida had one. The city's got a couple of them. Currently, we clean all the lift stations for the city of Orlando, and a lot of theirs have houses built, and they have stairs you have to walk down there. And they'll have, instead of 2 pumps, they'll have 3 or 4 pumps. Another design of the lift station. This is just a single, so this is more like a plumber's package that you might have. Let's say you're redoing your grease straps or something, and it's not a high flow, but you have 1 grease strap, and now the new ordinance is making you put 4 grease straps in. So now you don't have the right elevation, so you've got to put a pump tank in to pump it. It's just for the kitchen. A lot of times you would go with a smaller lift station like this. Okay. Murphy's Law, if anything can go wrong, it will. The worst possible time. So there's obviously electrical hazards with lift station. There's fall hazards with lift stations. So it's definitely a confined space entry only with hydrogen sulfide gas and a lot of different hazards. You can get hurt real easily. Want to make sure that you always, if you're going to do any kind of maintenance or inspection, you have a partner with you. The buddy system, that way if something, God forbid, did happen, someone's there to call 911 or help you. More hazards. Electrical. So we do the electrical maintenance, but anything hardcore with electrical, we normally call an electrician. And I would suggest if you do your own maintenance at the schools, that you do the same. Especially the 480 can kill you, so you got to be real careful on the bigger lift stations and not try to do more than what you're capable of doing, which your knowledge level is. And to lock out, tag out, to turn off the power when you're going to work on the panel. Usually there's a disconnect next to the panel after the meter. Not always, but a lot of times. Just some different pump designs. It's going to be the pump house design, where the motors and the impeller are on a shaft and it ends up sucking out of a tank. Pump cure. All your pumps are going to come with a pump cure, where you can look at your distance, elevation, and the head pressure, and figure out what size pump is appropriate for that. That's a volute, and the impeller is going to go in there, and the discharge is going to hook up to that, and the pump motor is going to sit on top of that. 3 different kinds of impellers. Going to basically spin and direct the flow into the discharge pipe, and it's going to ultimately go into the valve box, and that's going to go into the force main. See the air in the left picture? It's going to cause cavitation, it's going to cause the pump to shake, and it's going to end up almost like sandblasting the metal and put holes in it. Got a picture coming up of that. And it's important that these pumps stay submerged and that they don't, they're not designed to suck air. This is a submersible pump. This is probably the most common that you're going to find in a lift station. Normally it's going to have a guide rail system where you can easily pull it out, maintenance the pump, unclog it, and slide it back down the rails where it's going to sit on a saddle. And it basically just the weight holds it down onto the gasket. That's cavitation, so you can see how it's heating up. It's nothing more than air being allowed to enter the pump. Some more pictures of it. see they've got some, flexible joints there that allow for the pump to move and it not break anything. Check valve is gonna prevent backflow, so when the pumps turn off, they don't have pressure against them, causing them to spin the opposite direction that they pump, which is bad for pumps. So you can see when the water flows through it, it opens up, and when the water pushes back, the pressure closes it. And these would typically be in your valve box right next to the lift station. Your isolation valve, which would be in the valve box, or just out, and also there's usually one just outside the valve box in the grass, to where you could turn it off, and if there's pressure on the system, you could work on it. You could take and rebuild the valve box, or take the isolation valves, whatever you needed to do. That's a gate valve, so there'd normally be a valve box that goes up that says sewer or water on it. And you would open that up and stick a key down, and you would close it or open it. So an air release valve is used on lines that have a high point, and that will cause air to get into the force main. And since we know air is bad, whenever there's a high point in force main, usually the engineer will spec out a air relief valve to be installed. And they'll usually have, it looks like an irrigation box a lot of times, a little 2 foot by 1 foot little box that goes on top of it. So this is a schematic for the electrical control panel. A lot of times when you open the panel door, the manufacturer will have this information on the door. It's a duplex panel. It has the run lights, it has the hour meter, it has on, off, and auto. So if you were to turn the switch on, the pumps are gonna run. They're never gonna turn off until they burn out. If you turn it off, they're off. If you turn them on auto, the floats are gonna control the pumps. And it's gonna have an hour meter. One of the important things when you do a maintenance is that you write down the hour meter, because it will tell you if one pump is running more than another one, which will tell you maybe your alternating relay is bad, because these pumps are designed to alternate. They're not designed for one pump to run continuously. That causes them to overheat and get too much use and burn out quicker than they should. Has to do with the 4 levels for the floats, which we had talked about. There are different types of floats. The typical float is going to be a mercury switch float with a weight on it. And when the level gets high enough, that flips upside down and it activates it. Or when it drops down, it activates it. They also have electric probes, pressure probes, ultrasonic bubblers, but floats are predominantly the most common. 95% of the lift stations that you see in Florida have floats. These are the different kinds of control systems. This is the fill it up with water, and then you would calculate how much it pumps down in a 5-minute or 10-minute or 30-minute period. it's flow in gallons per minute equals wet well volume in gallons. This is an example of how to do it. Something once a year you should do when you're just check and make sure that everything's working correctly. This has the gallons per foot, depending on the radius of the wet well. And 4 foot and 6 foot are very common. When you get larger than that, usually you're dealing with a triplex or quadplex lift station that is municipalities. Another way of doing it when you can't stop the flow, it's not going to be anywhere near as accurate. Like I say, all this, I'd be more than happy to give it to anybody that needs it. You can always Google it, Google's got everything. So there's that's right over by Lake Eola, downtown Orlando. So that is a house that is built on top of a wet well, that the motors are in the house and the actual volutes are down in the wet well itself. So typically we would do a maintenance on a 3 month, 6 month, or once a year. Occasionally we do it monthly. It really depends on if they're having a lot of backup issues with rags and problems like that. An unplanned maintenance is going to be a last minute emergency when we come out. We kind of clean it, pull the pumps, unrag them, let the customer know what's going on. But really, it should be preventative. It should be scheduled with whoever you decide to use. Some kind of a routine maintenance. It's going to be cheaper that way too. Last minute call, you've got the cleanup, and it's a different rate to come out last minute versus on a maintenance program. You can also do the cleaning every 3 months, but you can do the maintenance more frequently. It just depends if you're having problems. A lot of times we'll do the maintenance and the cleaning at the same time. I don't really necessarily think that you have to do the maintenance and check it every single month unless you're having problems. But every 3 to 6 months is typically what we're doing for most of our customers anyway, for the cleaning and maintenance. That's a control panel. Confined space, lockout, tagout, electrical safety, and personal protective equipment. There's some of the safety rules and regulations for working around the lift station. Reporting the hours are very important. Opening and checking the wet well, valve box. A lot of times there's a scum line where grease will build up, where the pumps turn off and the water sits. Then it turns on, pumps down, and then it goes back up where that off float turns the pumps off. There'll be a build up there, and it's important because if that gets out of control, big pieces can break off and get into the pumps, and that can damage your pumps. Also the floats, it's very important that they are adjusted correctly and that they're functioning. If a zip tie breaks or dry rots and a float falls down, it can it can cause a pump not to turn off. And burn up. Also, the electrical cords, they can fall down and get sucked up into the volute of the pump and damage the pump too. And cause a backup. Routine visit, we're going to test the alarm, run each pump by hand, core voltage and amps. We're going to check for leaks. We're going to make sure the check valves are operational. And the most important thing before you leave, always make sure that the pumps are on auto, because when you get home later, you'll wonder, did I turn it on auto? And you'll drive back out there. It's always worth the last thing that you do before you leave, open the control panel and triple check that you turn everything back on auto, that you didn't leave it off or you didn't leave it on hand. So in our maintenance agreement, we have a 2-hour response time. So if we get called, we have 2 hours to respond 24/7 to a lift station emergency. And I think that most maintenance companies are going to have some verbiage, 2 hours, 3 hours, some kind of a response time, because I'm pretty sure that all the municipalities are going to require that. So if you lose power and there's a lightning strike, obviously the lift station not going to work unless you have a backup generator. And we may have to bring out a backup generator or a bypass pump to pump from the wet well and hook it up into the valve box to bypass the system until we get it fixed. So it's hard to have spare parts for every single type of lift station out there. I know the municipalities have an ordinance that they have to have, like Orlando Utility Commission, everything in their system they have in a warehouse for a backup. But for the private sector, there's a billion different pumps. So it's very difficult. That's why you have to be able to bring out a bypass pump and bypass it sometimes until you can get the correct part, especially nowadays. As I'm sure everybody in this room knows, it's not as easy to get stuff as it was a couple years ago. So you're typically going to have an electrical, a mechanical, or electronic processing control problem when a lift station goes down. The mechanical would be, there's a pipe break, something like that. Pump isn't working. There's a rag in it. It's good to have a troubleshooting checklist that your technician can use and go through when he gets on site for the panel and for the wet well and valve box. And the lift stations that get maintenance more frequently tend to really not have problems nearly as much as the ones that they only call you when it breaks. We went to a place right down the street here called Maxwell Terrace, and it's a low-income apartment complex. And they would call us every 3 or 4 months with a backup. They didn't want to do a maintenance program. And for about a year, they saw how much they had spent the previous year. They went to a monthly maintenance program. We haven't had a problem in 2 years. It's just a matter of keeping it clean. They had a rag and grease issue. So checking everything, making sure that the floats are correct, everything's working and everything's clean, really will go a long way, especially if you've got a high flow lift station that's been a problem. Anybody got any questions? I don't know how we worked out on our time. Probably got all kinds of time. Yes, sir.
What is the correct way of, so we have a hired, contractor that comes in and cleans our lift stations, maintains them. We have them photograph it, but what should we expect? How clean is clean?
Well, a lot of times that grease rim, you're not gonna get 100% of it off. A lot of times there'll be a stain there, and there might even be a little bit. But your floats, they should pull the floats out, they should clean all the grease off the floats. They should try to get that ring. We have a pole that hooks on, that's 10 foot long, so we can try to wash that, and a scraper, like a putty knife on a pole, so we can kind of scrape that off. Should be pretty clean.
Scrape down the sides?
Scrape right where that ring builds,
Right.
right at the top. We would
So,
scrape down the sides.
it doesn't
Also
seem-
on the piping right there.
We don't get, I guess our grease separators are doing a pretty good job, but it's debris, and especially the microfiber towels
Yep.
that make it through. Is it reasonable to expect them to dip all that out?
We generally will pump the water down to right at the top of the pumps. Then we will vacuum everything out. And the difference is we're using jet vac trucks that are capable of doing that. A lot of companies are gonna use pump trucks.
Right.
If you have a 20-25 foot deep well, a pump truck's gonna have a real hard time. Not that it can't be done, but they're gonna bust their butts doing it to get it clean. And the pressure washer on the pump truck is nothing compared to the jet vac pressure washer. But there again, when you go to dump, the disposal facility charges triple to dump a jet vac versus a pump truck, because generally the waste that a jet vac's bringing in is much worse.
Oh, wow.
So, there's a lot of reasons why people would use a pump truck to clean a lift station, and a lot of it has to do with disposal costs. And the only thing that matters when you're putting these bids in is how cheap you can do it. And that's why people use pump trucks.
So how often, like right now, we're pumping ours down twice a year,
Yeah.
down to the top of the pumps, and then having them, we don't have a jet vac truck in our area,
Yeah.
but they're using pump trucks to vacuum it out.
As long as they get it all the way to the bottom, usually there'll be a slanted channel at the bottom,
Right.
for the pumps. And because your problem is the rags are heavy and they go to the bottom where grease floats. So if the pump never pumps down past the top of the pumps, the grease never has a chance to get sucked up into the pump, but the rags do. Now,
We
one of
even
the,
had rags damage our pumps while we're cleaning it.
yeah.
It seems like they get concentrated.
Because that's right. So it's taken them, when they only have a foot of water in the bottom, all those rags are in there, and then they're going to clean that out. And they're running the pumps while they're cleaning it out and sucking in air. They shouldn't be, that last foot, when they get down, those pumps should be off. And they clean it. What they're probably doing is running the pumps while they're trying to clean the last foot. That's getting air in the line, and that's sucking out all the rags that they should be removing.
Is there any kind of effective strainer system to
So
prevent
a
that?
basket, you can get a basket made that goes on the inlet. Here's the problem with the basket. And I'd love to sell you a basket. I'd love to come out there every day and clean it for you. But if you don't clean it, almost every day, someone has to go out there and pull who wants this job? Pull the basket out and put it in a trash bag, okay? Whoever gets assigned that task is gonna hate you and probably just gonna go out there and not do it.
Yeah.
So it overfills and you get these huge chunks of rags, and once it fills up, they come out the top of the basket. And now you've got this mega rag in the lift station, and it clogs the pump up. Even easier, because that mega rag sinks to the bottom even quicker and gets attracted to the pump even easier. So I don't really have a great experience with the baskets. If someone went there every single day and cleaned it, yes. Now they do have what's called a Muffin Monster as the manufacturer. They're out of California. And you would put a manhole in before the lift station, or if it's a big one like at 33rd Street Jail down here, they've got a huge lift station, and they mounted it on the wall right when the 24-inch intake pipe comes into the lift station, and it grinds up all the trash.
a smaller lift station would put a manhole in before the lift station that the muffin monster would go in. But you almost only see those at prisons. And it will chew up.
They have grinder pumps that actually are.
They do. The problem with the grinder pump is the discharge in the grinder pump is smaller than my pinky. So although the grinder pump is really good for grease, for rags, it still gets clogged up. You'll have to pull them out. You'll have to take the volute off. You'll have to get a coat hanger and try to clean it out, put it back together. Grinder pumps are great, but it depends on the material. If it's more of a rag problem, you want a big volute style pump that can grab that rag and send it down the line. But even then, I mean, it still can get
Yeah, it seems like
clogged.
they wrap the impeller.
Yeah, it still can get clogged. You can't. Rags are one of them deals where it's really tough, and they've got these great, like Liberty has this great demo that they have where they put like all kinds of trash down there and it chops it up and shoots it down the line, and they're great. And even for rags, you know, my experience is the volute style is going to do better. But every situation is different. You know, I'm sure you with the Orange County Public Schools, I'm sure you guys have had a lot of issues and went to the grinder and it worked great. You know?
Yeah, we did, especially on the small ones that are like the portable fields.
Yeah.
Like if it's just a small little lift station or a portable field, they usually have that just one little grinder pump. That we have.
Yeah, and you know, with kitchens and stuff, they're really good. If you have a lot of grease, they're really good. And you know, they've got all kinds of new technologies too. They're always designing stuff that will cut up like t-shirts and stuff better.
It's the 8x8
Yeah.
microfiber towels that just
Mop
killing us.
heads are another big one that somehow seem to make it into the lift station. You know? I was cleaning a drain line one time in a hotel, and I pulled out blue jeans out of the drain line, and I was thinking, how is that possible for someone to even flush that? You know, but it was a full set of blue jeans. Too crazy.
You have to feed it down.
I don't know how that happened, but it was in there.
So on planning out your maintenance, so like right now, we're having someone come out monthly, scoop out what they can from the top, haul that away, and twice a year, we're pumping it down. Would it be better off just doing like quarterly, having them pump it down and skip the monthly?
I would. You could probably have it, put that maintenance towards doing more cleanings and the maintenance at the same time. That's what I would do. I think the cleaning, you can get a lot done while they clean it. They can do the maintenance. And the cleaning is predominantly probably the most important thing, and it's a lot of times people will clean once a year and they'll do maintenances monthly, so they kind of do it backwards, you know. But there again, if you know, somebody can go out there, do the maintenance, look at it, and say, hey, it needs cleaned, and they only clean it when the guy says it needs cleaned, you know. So it's
We have to send one of our people out.
yeah, you know, it's.
Every
But if you
time.
know that you're having a problem with it, that would be the best bet. And if it's some kind of a facility that you're having a problem every couple of weeks, then you might want to look into getting the muffin monster installed, because that's going to take those rags and break them up into little pieces that won't clog the pumps, and they work exceptionally well. That's good. Any other questions? Well, cool. If anybody needs this presentation, just shoot me an email. Thanks for giving me your time, and